I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
I'm Michael.
And this is Snake Envy. We are thrilled to be joined again by Michael Larson with Solid Serpants. Always brings a little flair to the conversation.
Flair, baby.
Got his hand.
Ooh, not that flair.
Jazz hands. We don't want. That's not the flair we're looking
That's
for.
not the flair we're
Fierce.
looking
I'm fierce.
Larry. So this is our final video on sort of the progression of the hobby. We started in the 80's and we were all rocking it out and talking about the fact that the hobby was kind of in its infancy in terms of the captive bred hobby. And then in the 90's, late 90's, things were starting to pick up. Internet kind of opened a whole other world. We talked about magazines, and for you young folks out there, mailing lists from breeders listing all their animals and prices. So now it's 2000, let's say 20. The captive hobby is sort of matured. It's really come into its own. So for you two guys as breeders, as we kind of moved into the 2000s, the teens, and into 2020, what really changed for you significantly as a breeder?
You want to go?
Go ahead.
So the biggest thing, 2004, Facebook came around.
Yeah.
Back in 2004, you had to be a college kid or a university kid. And then 2006 is when the public could get in. So your grandma, the guy in Sudan, the guy from South Korea, everyone was using Facebook. And then in the meantime, the biggest changer was YouTube, 2005.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, in those 2 years, 2004 to 2006, the world really changed. And then the first iPhone, that was 2007. So 2007 to 9 is when smartphones really took off.
Yeah.
So the whole way that the world took in information was all in that 4 or 5 year span. And that really is what changed everything. So
Yeah.
before that, go ahead.
No, it's just like phones, pictures. You know, you have to have a picture to sell the animal now. You can't just not have a picture. I mean,
It has to be the animal.
Yes.
It's not good enough just to be the right species.
And before that, because you guys are older than me, so you'll know that reptile keeping really was just having reptiles or knowledge of reptiles was very limited and kind of a niche thing. And then you had in the mid to late 90s, Steve Irwin came around. And Steve Irwin was the first mainstream pure reptile guide. It was just, crikey, anybody that's not even a reptile guy knew who Steve Irwin was. And then he died in 2006. And then during that, there was really nobody. You had some kind of knockoff guys and guys that were really, just following, but there was no one that was really truly dedicated to reptiles until 2008. Then Brian Barczyk. That's why I'm wearing this, is I went to the very first animal con that Brian Barczyk put on before he died. So I'm wearing this. 2008 Snake Bites TV came out on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that was really for hobbyists and for keepers and reptile people. That was really the first thing that it showed this. It showed what Jason does, the tubs, the snakes, the variety. And then, you had some other guys that came around, Dave Kaufman and Clint and Snake Discovery, all in 2014 to 15, 16, right?
Yeah.
But that really made it mainstream for more than just Jason and Mike and
Just
myself.
us nerds.
So that really boomed. And everybody could actually see snakes and love snakes.
Appreciate them more, yeah. And I think the general public, I think that's a fantastic point about Steve Irwin, because, now, he may have over dramatized things at times.
He would be hated now, unfortunately.
He might have kind of simultaneously was drawing attention to beautiful and wonderful animals, but maybe also at the same time causing people to go, whoa, why do you want to be anywhere near those guys? So there was kind of some good and bad, but you're right. between social media, somebody like Steve Irwin. The other one I would bring up is expos. We talked about expos in the 90's video, and toward the late 90's and into the early 2000s, expos were starting to kind of spread from their first original locations. We're going to be in Pomona in what, a month, roughly?
So excited.
And
4 weeks.
so arguably the biggest show in the country right now.
Well, definitely on the West Coast.
Is Tinley bigger?
Absolutely on the West Coast, but I've seen some people who go to Tinley regularly last year say they think Pomona's bigger now. But
Daytona was
either
the
way,
big dog.
yeah,
It was. I don't know.
it was. But either way, I mean, this is one of the super shows. This is one of the biggest shows in the country. So it is. It's exciting. And to get that many vendors and animals and customers and people and just the general public who's curious. And all through the 2000s, the expos have just been building. It's just city by city by city. And one trend I've noticed lately is they're combined. It used to be kind of a reptile show was a reptile show. And then you started seeing arachnids.
Plants.
Oh, yeah.
And
Plants.
now you're seeing
Yeah.
plants. And now it's kind of the trend, I think, in the last couple years. They're just pet expos. So you're seeing reptiles, you're seeing birds, you're seeing mammals, we went to one in Portland last year, and it was like that. There were birds, there were plants, there were even some mammals and some other things. So I think that's one of the trends now is reptile folks, instead of just kind of, being off by ourselves, we're kind of participating on a larger way in just general expos, whether it be plants, pets in general. So I think that's cool.
I feel like the reptile expos are the biggest expos for animals.
Yeah.
Like the king of animal
Yeah,
expos.
agreed.
And so spiders had to be lumped in because I don't know if would a show as an arachnid show just be very small?
Maybe, or you'd have to combine it with I don't know. It'd be like tattoos and spiders, or you know what I mean? I mean,
remember they
might
did
not
one
be
of those
other
in Phoenix
Really?
last year, tattoos
Yeah.
and reptile expo.
yeah.
Oh,
So it's interesting, things are starting to kind of coalesce around pets. And I think, speaking to your point, Mike, reptiles are a lot more mainstream than they were in the 90s.
It's so commonplace for a household to have
Yeah.
a lizard, a bearded dragon, ball python, whatever. It's very common.
Yeah.
Back 20 years ago, you were kind of weirdo doing this.
Yes, I had a business call today, and I'm on a conference call and with a gentleman in Arizona, and they adopted 2 desert tortoises down
Oh,
there.
nice.
And he saw one of my snakes in the background on camera, and he's like, "Hey, reptile guy." I'm like,
That's
"Yeah."
cool.
So
Nice.
it's much more mainstream. I think that's probably the biggest change, just in terms of the captive hobby. But what snakes, 2015, 2020, what were kind of the new things maybe you were expanding into? Were there snakes that had kind of been out there on the periphery that had become, Pituophis over the last 10, 15 years has really taken off in popularity.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that...
Things I didn't keep, like house snakes, and they've been around. And house snakes have really came on the scene pretty strong as of late.
Yeah. And you and I have just invested in kind of diving into house snakes more deeply.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that.
But the one that it trips me out how popular they are, and everybody, people keep talking about them. And I was people would ask about them at expos 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm like, you're not going to see that there. And now you see them all over. It's those false water cobras.
Oh, yeah.
That thing, those, I didn't even know what the heck those things were
Yeah.
until a few years ago.
In the 80's and 90's videos, we talked a little bit about how the world hadn't quite been available to us in totality. And these days, is there really a part of the world that we don't have access to, in terms of they've either already been established in the US, even if you can't import more, but are there any snakes that, really are kind of still unattainable? I think everything anybody wants, and I think anything that does well in captivity is probably out there.
Yeah, I'm always infatuated like with Africa.
Yeah.
Some of these countries where they have stuff that I don't know that exists. Like,
Yeah.
and would these animals be good captive? Like, I don't
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, it
But
takes
yeah.
a dedicated person to work with them.
Was there one for you, Michael, that was always kind of way out there, and now it's routine, or maybe not boring, but a little more routine now?
I feel like Asian rat snakes are starting to pop off,
Yeah.
and now you can just get them. Where even just a few years ago, it seemed Asian rat snakes were more of a that type of thing, and now everyone just
Yeah.
you can get them, and they're just like North American snakes. They're the same care, and they're
Yeah.
chill, and they're beautiful.
Well,
And
they tend to like cooler climates.
Yeah.
But, they've been around. It's just they weren't, like you said, accessible readily. Like since I've been in this hobby 30 years, I've always wanted a 100 flowers rat snake, and I just this has never happened yet, and I'm not really set up.
one.
So
I'm
those
not
are-
set up for it.
Yeah.
That's maybe something I would put in my house
yeah,
in a display, just because it's that or a green bush rat or something like that, because they like those cooler temperatures and like what you keep your house at
Yeah.
more so.
Matt Most has been at Serpamitra. He's been producing some beautiful aberrant
Oh yeah.
Mollendorf.
Mollendorf, yeah.
Yeah, those are top notch. I think top 5 most beautiful naturally occurring snakes.
Big python looking head.
Yeah, they're so pretty.
So cool.
So the snake I really wanted to bring today, and one that we did talk about in our 80s and 90s video, or primarily in the 90s, I'd love to bring my green tree python, but this time of night, he is entirely food motivated this time of the evening, and he probably wouldn't cooperate with us very well. I did bring my Janai. Now, for people out there who may say, well, it's a Mexican species, everybody who wants one probably has one. It's not like they're difficult to get. But in the 90s, and I would say even in the early 2000s, it was still pretty exotic to even have something from Mexico.
Oh yeah.
And how difficult is it, or is it even possible today, right now, to import Mexican species? It's not as easy as it was there for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's doing it right now, but
Yeah.
it sure what really needs to happen.
Yeah.
Personally, I think like the Kluberts in Mexico that's the pinnacle for me. Like I
Really?
want to go to Mexico. I want to
I
just
know.
go play in Mexico all the time.
I would give anything to find one of these guys in the
This is
wild. It would
beautiful.
just
Even
be
the Depui, that's
the
my
Depui,
that's
yeah.
like oh.
So, I substituted this, but I mentioned in the 90s video, for a long time, like a green tree python bred in captivity was incredibly rare. Like, you had to import them, and then you had to deal with whatever health issues arose from doing that. There were farms in, Indonesia that were raising them out of the wild, but that's not the same as
Right.
a captive breeding facility like the one we're in. And so it was precarious. It was expensive. There was no guarantee your green tree python was going to survive. It wasn't that long ago. What would you say? Maybe a decade where this still would have been considered a little rare. What would you say? 10 years, 15 years?
Yeah, I mean they're around.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like in the Janai are now finally pretty readily available,
Yeah.
where the Depui still aren't.
Correct.
The Lineatricolus are still hard
Yeah.
to come across.
Gibsoni, those are hard to find.
Yeah, there's still some rare stuff.
So even in neighboring Mexico, there's some species still in 2024 going into 2025
Yeah,
that are pretty rare.
there's lots of stuff.
Now you have what? You have one Gibsoni.
Yeah.
You're looking for another.
Mm.
Depui. Do you have those still?
I
Or-
have two.
You have two. Okay. And you keep Janai as well. But, not a green tree python, but I think it's kind of a similar thing. You know, there was a time, even in the 2000s, where it was like the world wasn't really our oyster. And even something like this would have been a little rare. But now, I don't know, where's the next hotspot in the world? You mentioned false water cobras. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, that's
They've
the
really-
one that came on hot, strong lately.
Yeah. And they're big.
They're big,
They're
they're fun.
impressive.
Yeah.
Zach Loafman, he's pushing those. He just wrote a book
Good
on it.
temperaments. They are. They're fun to interact with.
This is a cool snake. If you want to see it fresh, how beautiful it can be, go to the video that we did. What was it? Urban, probably 2-3 months ago?
Yeah, urban snakes. This guy is always one of our stalwarts that we take out when
Yeah,
we do education. He's such a good guy, and around people, he's just fantastic. I can take this guy anywhere. This is Hidalgo.
I'd say Pituophis are becoming more popular as pets recently, too.
Yeah,
They're not just kind of
Yeah.
a hobbyist snake. Anybody could get one.
Well, I feel like the bull snakes are strong, but not as strong as the subspecies aren't as popular. I mean, certain ones like northern pines are really popular, but like the gopher snakes, they're out there and plenty of them. But like, I don't feel like their popularity is off the charts or busting at the seams by any manner.
They're still a little underrated.
For sure.
Well, they are to a non-snake person, the hiss. People don't like the hiss and they don't like the drama. So for us, it's normal. We're like, oh, look at that stupid little thing.
Well-
but to other people that are not snake folk, they see a hiss and
Well,
they get scared and say, nope, I don't want to touch that craziness.
This guy is just big enough, and I have a kankakee that's a little bigger, and Jason has some bulls in here that are much bigger.
That's a great
But,
size snake.
You know, this is over 6 feet, and he's thickening up now, and, you know, for a non-snake enthusiast, this can be a little intimidating, particularly if you get a hiss.
yeah.
And they're so strong when they're this size.
It's funny.
He's locked on tight.
Yeah, I had someone over, not a non-snake person, but they liked snakes and they were interested over here the other day, and they weren't intimidated by the hissing and huffing and puffing because they were familiar with reptiles. But it's like,
Yeah,
it's kind of the allure that makes them fun is because they're
I agree. It's
got-
personality.
Yeah, they're dramatic.
put
People love drama.
on the show, and it's all an act, and for the most part.
That personality is fun. Okay, so I've got a couple questions for each of you. It's 2024. We're about to go into 2025. What, in your opinion, considering where the hobby is now and how well it's going and just exploded in popularity the past, 20 years, what can we do better in order to keep the growth going and further it and not hurt it?
Hybridization is always like a negative to me. Keeping localities pure, that sort of thing.
Of course, such a breeder answer. Like, keep everything pure.
Keep it, yeah.
Keep it
Anyways.
clean.
I was going to say, let's
Keep
just
it
start
clean,
breeding
people.
garter snakes and corn snakes. And I would say the thing that we can do is just like we're doing. We come together, we be chill, we make friends. If you're a turtle guy and a snake guy, you still can,
That's common
be
ground.
pals.
Yeah.
Iguana guys, and what else is there? I don't know, but we're all reptile people, and we all can appreciate it. And just because you are an arachnid guy, doesn't mean you have to just stick with arachnids. Branch out, meet each other, have fun, share each other's pictures, like, comment.
That was the
Just be
one.
cool.
Yeah, sorry, but the one thing that was what used to be fun was Daytona, that reptile show, because it was at the Hilton,
Yeah.
and everybody at the show would get together at this hotel and mingle and hang out every Friday and Saturday night. Such a blast. I miss
Yeah,
that.
the mingling.
I wish
Yeah.
and Pomona in Anaheim
Yeah.
was like that. And it probably is to some degree if you go to the
Yeah.
auctions and stuff, but but at Daytona, it was just like a big party.
It was a convention, yeah.
And just,
yeah.
you would see all these big names, and oh my gosh, that's Chad Brown. He played football for the Steelers. Like, you know.
Now we know each other online more than we know each other in person. Yeah, I think it shows it is fun to go mingle a little bit, go check everybody out. One thing I think we have to be careful of, you mentioned Steve Irwin, and we kind of talked a little bit about that, but I do think with everything being online now, and we do have to be careful not to be our own worst enemy. Unfortunately, there are people out there, whether they be politicians or whether they be everyday people, who would love nothing more than to be able to brag about, ending animal cruelty and whatever it might be, or banning dangerous animals. And we have to be careful that we don't give them justification. There are people out there online who maybe don't always present these animals in the most positive light or try to antagonize them for drama. Nothing irritates me more than when I see those videos online of like a 20-foot python or anaconda in a swimming pool with a bunch of toddlers. It just drives me nuts, because I'm like, you've just put a predator like in its element and you just threw a bunch of kids in the pool with it. You're just begging for something bad to happen. And if something like that were to happen, it could be devastating. We're already seeing what's going on in the Everglades and in Florida. We have to be careful not to pile on, and, we have to make sure all of our online ambassadorship for this hobby and these animals is as positive as we can make it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because those people will lump a corn snake in with a Burmese python and think your corn snake's going to get out and eat the baby, But it's just education. So that's why I like to work with the simple stuff. I have my corn snakes and gopher snakes, even ball pythons that are beginner snakes that you can just hand anyone, and that's how you really spread the snake love, is starting young.
I don't care if you have an anaconda or a rattlesnake or whatever it might be, but just, be careful about the image you represent online and not making people think we're promoting something dangerous or unhealthy or whatever it might be. All right, let's end on a little more positive question. What do you think should be or will be, you can handle it either way, what should or will be so we've talked about from the 80s to the present, all the growth, all the new species, what should be the next big thing in the hobby? It doesn't have to be a species, by the way. It can be something related to husbandry or equipment or enclosures or whatever. But what should be the next big thing that everybody's got on their minds and thinking about, and what should everybody want?
Well, for me, as a pit guy, I'm going to stay in that. I've been working with bull snakes before they were popular, like they are.
Yeah.
Gopher snakes, I think, should be the next thing. They're miniature bull snakes, and you got all the colors in each species. And so I think, why is a bull snake here and a gopher snakes are down here in popularity? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because they're just the same thing, generally, just different sizes.
And size-wise, and when you combine everything about them, they really are a perfect beginner snake. They really are.
Easy to handle.
Yeah.
I mean, sit in your hand.
We just showed you a 6-foot plus, but imagine that with the colors and all the, the patterns and everything that's exciting, but in a 4-foot range.
Yeah. And what's cool is, like, they eat like right off the bat. Like, they're super easy.
They're easy.
They're probably one of the easier colubrids, I think.
Without a doubt. And they like lower temperatures. And like Mike was talking about with experimenting with husbandry, they would do great just in a ambient room temp kind of environment. They would do just
74
fine.
to 78.
Yeah. How about you, Michael?
So I think, one thing, the next big documentary that might hurt us is the guy who did Tiger King and Chimp Crazy. They are doing a reptile one. They started with Tom Crutchfield, and they have a bunch of Tyler Nolan and all kinds of folks that are going to be in on it. So That is going to be, I think that's coming out next year. I mean, he's been working on it for a while. And the one good thing, hopefully, is he is a reptile guy, that Eric Good. So it might be okay for people like us, the people who probably should be worried venomous and giant snake.
Yeah.
So, but that might be a thing where we're kind of already pushing for husbandry, but we're almost going too far. I joke about it all the time. People say you need a corn snake in a 3,000 gallon waterfall, outdoor, indoor.
Yeah.
Craziness.
Make sure you got 8 different UV lights on there.
Yeah.
You got to have like 16 things plugged into it, or you're not doing it right.
I think we are starting to move in that direction, but just we need to be more chill about it. We're almost going too far. Just chill. Just chill out, and I think that's the way we're going to go and how we should be headed. Just get your stuff in a nice enclosure that looks presentable, so if we do start getting in trouble, you can say, oh, look. As for hobbyists, for breeders, it's going to be a different...
Yeah.
You can't have if you guys want all these fancy snakes, you can't have them all in 4x2x2s. It's not going to work out. That's, no matter what that is, dog, cat, bird, snake, you can't keep them in, there's a difference between a hobbyist and a breeder. If you are a hobbyist, you don't need to have them in tubs. Like you have 2 or 3 snakes. You don't really need them in tubs. Get a nice enclosure that they can see and move around.
But in saying that, and like, not everything needs a massive cage.
Yeah, not everything
because like
does.
you start dealing with Alterna, gray banded kings, milk snakes. They like tight little quarters. They hognose. They thrive in a smaller environment.
20-gallon tank is fine with that, I would say.
If I were to sum up your comment and piggyback it a little bit, can we, we've gone way out there with the husbandry. Maybe it's time to dial things back. But I would say specifically for beginners, I have always can we please let beginners start kind of easing into this thing a little bit, get a couple years under their belt with a snake, kind of get used to the idea that it's going to start eating now. I've got my temperatures dialed in. We're getting people used to the idea now that you probably want to dial temps down rather than dialing them up when you have issues. But can we just let beginners kind of ease in? It really frustrates me online when you see a beginner who's all excited about their new snake, all excited about their enclosure. It might not even be completely set up yet, but they just want to show it off. And they get bombarded with, make sure you do this, make sure you do this, go buy this, go buy that, Let's give them a couple years with kind of basic husbandry and just get, hit the ground running. And then in year 2, year 3, now we got tons of information, tons of things they can experiment. Anyway, what I think should be the next thing, and again, you might view this a little selfishly because we're kind of diving into the deeper end of the African house snake pool, but you mentioned gopher snakes, and I think African house snakes are right there. Tons of variety, tons of localities, tons of looks, tons of colors, great temperaments. They are, in my opinion, a perfect beginner snake as well, but they're also cool and exciting and something that can keep you interested for years and years and years and years. I don't care where you are in your reptile journey, there's a house snake out there for you. Some of them are very exotic, maybe even so exotic and tricky to raise that maybe they're not quite ready for captivity prime time yet. But there are some others that every bit as hardy and every bit as easy to keep. The capes, for example, Capensis, every bit as easy to keep as a gopher snake or a corn snake. Prolific breeders, they tend to double clutch if you're looking to breed. You don't even brewmate them, do you?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, they don't need to brewmate to breed, which is cool. So, and again, African continent, a little, exotic, but they're fantastic snakes. I think they're on the cusp. It's like Jason said, they've been out there for a long time. They're also a smaller species. So majority of them are kind of like a gray banded king or a hognose snake in terms of size. There's some of them that are very small. Some of them capes get in there to that 3-foot range and more for females. Males are smaller, so it's similar to hogs, where if you want bigger snake, go female. You want a smaller one, go male. But yeah, I think African house snakes, deservedly so, are right on the cusp.
Yeah, I have a black and a brown African house snake. And the black is one of my favorite snakes because it looks like a dragon. And they have the coolest
They
eyes.
look like little python heads, don't
Yeah,
The
they
little
do.
python
They're
heads
very
and
similar to
eyes.
if you're familiar with children's python,
Yeah.
they're very much the same size. They're a little more slender. But a children's python and a house snake are very similar.
Yeah.
Similar, the same care, basically same everything. And they have those cool cat eyes. That's what sold me on the house snake was the eyes.
The python head and the eyes, cat eyes, they're nocturnal. So yeah, it's amazing.
They're pretty snakes.
My only word of caution with the house snake is like, as a clubbered guy, they have bigger teeth than like
Their teeth, their bites are different than other
They're
snakes.
Their bites are different than the colubrids we're used to, but their temperament is really,
I
really
haven't
good.
been bit by one.
If you handle them and if
Not by a big one.
yeah,
I've been bit by my
they
brown one
adjust
many
really,
times.
really well. So
Just out of nowhere. Just,
I don't think their temperament is anything to worry about relative to others. But yes, fair warning, a little bit bigger teeth than a corn snake.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts? Anything about where we are, where we're going?
I'd say just keep making friends. That's how I made friends with them, is just through snakes.
Positivity. Just look for positivity.
Positivity. I do have one pet peeve. People, particularly if you're on a social media group that's all about what's uncommon or rare, and you post that photo of that amazing, beautiful snake that I have no clue what it is. Tell us what it is.
Oh yeah, that's rough.
I don't even care if you want to be the guy that's all Latin names. I'll go look it up. But nothing annoys me more than seeing something so amazing, so beautiful. There are still snakes out there in the hobby. I have no idea what they are.
No.
I have no idea where they're from. And I don't know if it's an ego thing, like if you don't know what it is,
Well,
or if it's like, hey, I'm gonna be breeding these, and I'm gonna make a fortune, and I don't want anybody to know.
well, and I've
But
done stuff
just tell
like
us what they are if you're putting them online.
No, I mean, if they're for sale, for sure. But no, I've posted pictures without a name and on certain morphs, and people are like, "What the hell is that?" And you kind of do that as a breeder to get attention. You want people to talk about it, you know. So that's
So you're one of them.
Yeah,
I'm one
he's
of
a
those
villain.
jackasses.
You hate them
You
now, don't
are
you?
one of them. I never knew.
I'm not a man of very much words.
Now, but nonetheless, you're probably talking about a gopher snake, or
for sure.
you know.
Yeah,
but these
usually.
people post pictures of stuff that I've
So exotic,
literally never seen
Yeah.
before. I have no idea where it's from in the world, and they'll say something like, "Haha, everything everybody says about these guys are true. Like I can only get it to eat this orange hornworm that you have to import from," and they won't even tell you from where, from elsewhere. And but then they tell you nothing about what it is. I even asked earlier this week on one of them. I said, "Details, please. That is a beautiful color." Nothing.
Oh, who was it? Let's
So if
shame
you're
them.
gonna show it
I'm all
off,
about shaming.
if you want everybody to see it, tell us what it is. I don't think that's a lot to ask.
No, at least put it in the hashtag.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least put it in the hashtag.
Yeah. Or tell me where it's from. Then I can go maybe track it down. All right. Fantastic conversation. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment. We love comments. We love having some conversations about this stuff. Tell us what you think should be the next big thing in the hobby. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.